Here, I, Advocate Asta Mishra, having granted me the opportunity to be the moderator of this session, which is on the topic divorce under Hindu law with recent judicial development. And for enlightening on this topic, we have with us Advocate Nishant Anand Sir as our keynote speaker. Sir is an independent practitioner at the Supreme Court of India and various courts of the country. He graduated from Vivekanand Institute of Professional Studies, a college affiliated from Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Delhi, in the year 2013. Then, Sir is practicing independently at the Apex Court of India and other courts, having key expertise in the field of civil law, employment laws, and matrimonial law. During his very early career, he has added a great achievement, or I can say a big achievement, to his profile, as Sir is the author of the book Women India, The Women in India, The Problem of Missing Girl Child, which got published in the year 2016 by the New Century publication. The book gave some eye-opening insights into the problem of female feticide in India. Sir profile clearly reveals that he is not only well-versed in the field of law, but also throwing light on the various social issues through his writing. So, sir, welcome you on our webinar, hoping to have a very enlightening and intellectual session. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Just going to check if I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Good afternoon to everyone, all my friends, colleagues, my friend Mr. Nitesh Mehra, my college senior, Asta for that matter. Thank you so much for giving me another opportunity to come on board and discuss with my fellow colleagues of a topic which is of concern these days and is on a rapid rise. Divorce is a concept which has of lately and in the recent time been a highlighted issue. Earlier, I remember that while I was going through the parliamentary bill of the Hindu Marriage Act, which was passed in the year 1955, thereafter the amendments which have taken place, divorce as per the Hindu mythology was never a concept. The marriage is said to be a sacred thread that ties two people. And in the earlier days, a person usually get divorced, or a person usually ends his marital tie in case of a spouse deceasing himself, being deceased, or hasn't been heard of. Subsequently, after the amendments, the divorce as per the Hindu Act 1955. Now, just in a nutshell, the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 applies to all the people who profess the Hindu religion, the Buddhists, the Jainis, and the Sikhs. So the act applies to all the people who are professing the four religions. There is a separate act for the Muslim community, the Christian community, and the Parsi law. When this amendment had come, as per the act, divorce is dissolution of marriage. So this is the act. What the act says is divorce is a dissolution of marriage. Now there are various theories, if we go about in a nutshell, there are various theories which are attributed to the concept of divorce. The theories can be classified into three. First is the fault theory. The second is a mutual consent theory. And the third theory is the irretrievable breakdown of marriage. So these are basically the three theories which are behind the concept of divorce under the Hindu Marriage Act. The fault theory, in a simple one-liner, if I may explain, is that where either of the spouses are at fault, whether it be the husband, whether it be the wife, either of the spouse can approach the court and seek divorce as per the various grounds which have been laid down under the Act. One is a mutual consent theory, which says that if both the spouses have decided to stay separately or to get their marriage dissolved, they can apply to a court for divorce by the way of mutual consent. The third theory which comes into play is the irretrievable breakdown of marriage, wherein both the parties have been married, but after marriage, they could not reconcile for numerous reasons. So this might be the theory of irretrievable breakdown of marriage, where the marriage has reached up to a certain end or an extent where the parties could not reconcile. So these are the three concepts that we'll be discussing in detail. And all the grounds of divorce, all the pronouncements that we hear in the recent times would be somewhere or the other attributed to the fault theory, wherein one of the parties is at fault and the other parties approaches the court for the grounds of divorce. Certain things that we need to keep in mind before invoking section 13, subclause 1, subclause 2, or 13B of the mutual consent, or section 13B, wherein the parties can approach through a mutual consent. Couple of things to be kept in mind before one approaches the court by the way of divorce. The first thing is that 1 year should have elapsed from the date of marriage before any party approaches the court for a divorce. In case of a mutual consent divorce, the parties must be residing separately for a period of 1 year or more before approaching the court asking for the dissolution of marriage. However, if a person is approaching or either of the party is approaching the court for a divorce on one of the grounds which has been enumerated in section 13.1 or 13.2 for that matter, can approach the court without the lapse of 1 year only under certain conditions. So as per the Act, if we talk about the first condition, the same can be that if the matter pertains to bigamy, then the spouse is not bound for a period of 1 year to lapse. The second can be that if there is a consent that has been given by either of the parties or the spouses, and the said consent has been taken on the ground of misrepresentation, force, undue influence, or fraud. So the onus lies upon the party which approaches the court to establish that the case falls within the said exceptions, and the parties approach the honorable court or the learned family court for that matter before 1 year from the date of marriage. So this is in a nutshell as to what is divorce and when can a party approach the court. A petition for divorce is filed before the learned family courts, depending upon the jurisdiction where the parties reside, where the marriage takes place, and the jurisdiction which has been laid down under the HMA Act. Now, if we talk about the fault theory, which is the most elaborative theory covering all the aspects of divorce, all the grounds which have been laid down in the section come under the fault theory. So the major ground which are enumerated under section 13(1) of the Act are: first, adultery. So this is a concept which we have heard of over the years, has been evolving, and is one of the major grounds for divorce under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. This was inserted by the way of amendment in the year 1976. So the Marriage Laws Amendment Act 1976 had inserted the ground of adultery as a ground of divorce. Swapna Ghosh is one of the judgments which were earlier in time, the first one wherein a party, especially the wife, was given divorce on the ground of adultery. The brief fact in a nutshell was that the wife had alleged and was able to establish that the husband had been into an adulterous relationship with one of the neighbors, and subsequently the neighbors had approved the version of the wife, and the wife was entitled to a divorce. The name of the case was Swapna Ghosh versus Sadanand Ghosh. So this was one of the first matters wherein the court had granted divorce to the wife on the ground of adultery. In another interesting case wherein the husband was granted divorce on the ground of cruelty against the wife, not on the ground of cruelty but on the ground of adultery, was Sachin Rath Chatterjee versus Nilima Chatterjee. The brief facts of the case was that the husband in this particular case had to travel to a different city for his work aspects. Subsequently, he used to come down once a month or twice a month to meet his wife. Subsequently, he discovered that his wife was into an adulterous relationship with her own nephew. And the husband was successfully able to establish it. And this was one of the very first cases wherein divorce was granted on the ground of cruelty on the ground of adultery to the husband. So adultery being one of the major grounds of divorce under the Act. Now, what are the essential thing or the essential ingredients for invoking or for getting a divorce on the ground of adultery? So the first and the foremost ingredient of getting a divorce on the ground of adultery is involvement in an intercourse by either of the spouse. So there should be an involvement, there should be an intercourse by either of the spouses with an unknown person, or maybe a known person but not the husband of the wife. The said intercourse has to be consensual and voluntary. This is the second ingredient wherein you try to attract adultery as a ground of divorce. The third ingredient, for that matter, is that the marriage between the parties is a subsisting marriage. And last ingredient that is essential is that circumstantial evidence, because in these cases, getting a direct evidence might be a problem for a party. But circumstantial evidence has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. So these are the four essentials which need to be kept into mind when either of the spouses apply or approach the court for divorce on the ground of adultery. The second ground which is prevalent is cruelty. Now, cruelty can both be physical as well as mental. Physical cruelty, as one understands by the nomenclature itself, would be that either of the spouses is inflicted upon any kind of bodily injury. So this would be something called the physical cruelty. Mental cruelty can be someone forced to mental trauma. Humiliation can be lack of emotional support, which we could also term as emotional cruelty. So mental and physical cruelty both attribute towards the ground for getting a divorce before the Indian courts under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. Now, some common grounds wherein a husband can approach the court on the ground of a mental cruelty by the wife could be false allegations made by the wife against the husband, humiliation which the husband has to face at the behest of the wife, termination of pregnancy without the husband's permission, denial of a physical relationship without a valid reason, immoral life which is led by the wife being into an adulterous relationship or an affair, aggressive behavior of the wife, constant demand of money by the wife, ill treatment by the wife to the husband or to the in-laws. So these are certain grounds wherein a husband can approach the honorable court for grant of divorce. And there are judgments to that effect wherein this principle has been evolved. And the ambit of divorce on the ground of cruelty has increased. On the contrary, the wife can also approach the honorable court seeking divorce against the husband on the ground of mental cruelty, and some of the examples are wherein the wife is forced to abort a child, that can be a ground of mental cruelty. Time and again demands of dowry by the husband, that can be another ground. Impotency of the husband can be another ground. False accusation of adultery upon the wife can be another ground. Humiliation and somehow the reason that we had discussed above can also be used by the other spouse, that is the wife, to approach the court. So these are the certain grounds which have been evolved over a period of time wherein either of the spouses on the ground of cruelty can approach the court for grant of divorce. The onus remains upon the party who is approaching the court, whether it be a direct evidence, whether it be a circumstantial evidence. The person approaching the court has to establish a case beyond doubt. The third ground which is available under the HMA for divorce is desertion. This is also one of the grounds wherein either of the spouses are entitled to seek a divorce. Again, there are certain essential ingredients which need to be kept into mind while a person is using this ground for claiming divorce. Now, the desertion has to be in the nature of a permanent desertion. So, I mean, this is one of the most important ingredients when a person is approaching the court on the grounds of desertion, that the desertion needs to be permanent in nature. One has to prove that there is a rejection of basic marital obligations upon the spouse to a marriage. This has to also be proved by the court. The desertion has to be without any specific reason. There is no specific reason attributed to the same. And there is no consent of the other spouse which is available. So under these, when all these four essential elements are fulfilled, one could approach the court for grant of divorce on the ground of desertion. Another ground which is available to the spouses can be conversion. suppose either of the spouses, without the consent of the other spouse, converts his or her religion, the other party can approach the court and seek a divorce. And Suresh Babu versus Leela was one of the first cases wherein the Supreme Court had granted divorce to a lady who had alleged that her husband has converted into a Muslim only for the purposes of a marriage, without there being any kind of consent by the wife. Insanity is another ground for divorce, wherein the person who is seeking a divorce has to prove that his spouse suffers from a mental illness or his behavior falls within the parameters of what is called insanity. Leprosy, vulnerable disease, is also another ground which has been given under the Act, wherein the party has to prove that staying with the spouse would be a risk to the own human health. Renunciation from the world, which is basic concern and also a very relevant ground of divorce in India. Presumption of death, wherein a person is unheard of for more than 7 years, is also another ground which is given under the Act for grant of divorce. So these are basically the major grounds which are illustrated under 13(1) for grant of divorce. And under section 13(2) of the HMA are certain grounds which are exclusively available to a woman or a wife to approach the court for grant of divorce. The most common ground that we today see is that of cruelty. Similar provisions are there under the Divorce Act, wherein section 10 speaks about divorce on the grounds of cruelty, and the grounds remain the same. Cruelty, the way of a cruel treatment, the ambit of cruelty has been expanded by judicial pronouncements which have been evolved over a period of time by the various high courts and the Supreme Court. The other aspect wherein a party can be granted divorce is by the way of mutual consent, wherein both the parties have agreed that they cannot no longer continue with the marriage aspect. They jot down a memorandum of settlement, settle their disputes either themselves or through the intervention of the family members, or either through mediation or the process of settlement by the court. One of the easiest forms of divorce, after the parties prepare an MOU, a first motion is filed. Parties, once granted first motion, are given a cooling period of 6 months. By the recent orders of the Supreme Court, the 6 month periods can be waived off in rare circumstances. An application for exemption of waiver or for a waiver of 6 months cooling down period can be applied. Once that application is allowed, the parties can proceed with the filing of the second motion and a decree of divorce is granted. But the condition important for it is that the parties should be living separately for a period of 1 year. Now coming to the third aspect or the third theory, what we had discussed is irretrievable breakdown of marriage. And a plethora of judgments right from 2018, 19, 20, Supreme Court in exceptional and rare circumstances has invoked its power under 142 and has dissolved the marriage of the parties. on the ground of irretrievable breakdown. One of the recent cases of 2020, wherein 12 years the parties have not been residing together, have been in no connect whatsoever. The Supreme Court, and if I correctly remember, the judgment was delivered by Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul. Caught the highlight of the newspapers, and on the ground of irretrievable breakdown of marriage, the Supreme Court invoked its power under Article 142. Coming back to the fault theory, which is the theory or the maximum cases which are instituted in India and under the HMA on the grounds of cruelty. Before discussing the cases at length, I would just highlight certain cases which I had culled out recently of various high courts and the Supreme Court post 2016 as to what could constitute a ground of divorce. In March 2020, the Calcutta High Court, in a big judgment, said that initiation of a false complaint or a false complaint against the husband and the in-laws, wherein on the basis of that complaint, the husband and the family members were sent behind the prison, constituted a ground of cruelty, and the husband was entitled to approach the court for grant of divorce. This is something which has been reiterated earlier by the Supreme Court, and in a recent judgment of the Calcutta High Court, the law has been again clarified. Lodging of frivolous cases, lodging of frivolous complaint, which has sent the husband or the in-laws behind the bar, and subsequently their innocence is proved, is considered to be a valid ground for divorce on the ground of mental cruelty. Whereas to the contrary, a judgment in February 2020 by the Supreme Court, wherein the husband had pleaded that he was sent behind the bars on a false complaint by the wife. Subsequently, after the trial, his innocence was proved in a 498A case. Would not constitute a ground for divorce because this was not specifically alleged, or this was not a plea which was specifically taken by him in the divorce proceeding. In August 2019, the Supreme Court, in a major judgment, came out to say that in case a woman or a wife approaches the court for protection of a statutory right, merely because the woman has approached the court for protection of a statutory right granted under the Act, would not entitle the husband for a grant of divorce. Punjab Haryana High Court, recently supported by the Allahabad High Court, have given a judgment on the point. Forced sex by the husband is a valid ground for divorce on the ground of cruelty and can be initiated by the wife. Earlier it was said by the Punjab and Haryana High Court, subsequently reiterated by the Allahabad High Court. The Delhi High Court in May 2018 also came up with an important judgment which in a nutshell stated that false allegation of infidelity amounts to cruelty, wherein the husband was able to establish false allegations. Nothing could be brought on record by the wife to disprove them. and the High Court affirmed the decision of the family court wherein a divorce was granted. Subsequently, in a recent judgment which everyone has heard of, caught the highlight of the newspaper clipping, wherein the wife has called the husband a mota hathi. The court said that it amounted to mental cruelty, sort of humiliation for the husband in front of his friends, family members, and became a valid ground for the grant of divorce. The Punjab and Haryana, to the contrary, has also held in one of its judgment passed in 2019 that mere aggressive or a volatile behavior of the wife is not a valid ground for divorce. So an aggressive behavior by the wife or an abusive behavior to that extent by the wife would not be self-sufficient as a ground of divorce. So one has to prove beyond guilt and to prove by the way of evidence. To prove by the way of evidence cruelty is one of the most difficult tasks. Now, how can one prove cruelty? One is through pleadings. Most of the parties are unable to prove their pleadings during evidence. Now, what kind of pleading should one have to prove this? The most important thing is, apart from what you plead, you should have substantial evidence to prove the same. So I share my personal experience while I was arguing one of the matters for divorce on the ground of physical cruelty and mental cruelty before the Family Court, Bangalore. So at the final argument, at the cross-examination stage, I had alleged specifically that the wife had a volatile behavior. The wife had an aggressive behavior. And in my cross-examination to the wife, I had asked her a specific question. That is it true that at a particular date, you had a fight with one of the neighbors? She said yes. At a particular point of time, did this family member intervene over a fight? She said yes. On the contrary, while after the two questions that I asked her, the thing that came to my rescue was she became volatile in the court. After the specific two questions asked by me, her tone became volatile in the court, and this was observed by the Honorable Court. So I did not have to go beyond my pleadings, and these two incidents followed with her own behavior in the court, which was recorded specifically by the court. And I was entitled to a divorce on the ground of cruelty inflicted upon me. So one is to allege the plea, and the second is to allege and prove or substantiate that in the evidence. Now, one cannot get a direct evidence in regard to the mental cruelty which has been inflicted. I would still understand that one could get a evidence for physical cruelty that is inflicted, but for mental cruelty to get a direct evidence is very difficult. So one has to corroborate that by circumstantial evidence, by the statement of the family members or the statement of a common friend, or to the incidents that you allege. You will have to prove yourself in the court during evidence. So to prove mental cruelty by way of evidence is the most challenging task when it comes to filing of a divorce or grant of a divorce on the ground of cruelty. So this is in a nutshell grounds which are available to a person or to either of the parties or the spouses for grant of divorce under the HMA. Now, quickly seeing certain more instances which have been highlighted by various high courts and the Supreme Court from 2018 onwards as ground of divorce. I will quickly recapitulate. We discussed legal recourse taken by the wife to protect her own rights, not amounting to mental cruelty or physical cruelty. Volatile behavior, not in all cases, upheld by the High Court, Punjab and Haryana, that would not constitute a ground of divorce. Calling of a mota hati, wherein the husband says that he felt humiliated or has been embarrassed in front of his friends, was considered to be a ground of divorce on the ground of cruelty by the Delhi High Court. Initiation of false complaint by the lady against her husband, wherein on pursuance of that complaint, they have gone behind the bars, amounts to a ground of cruelty. Forcing the husband to not stay with his parents, or initiation by the wife or insistence of the wife to not stay in a joint family, can also attribute to a ground of divorce, held not only by the Supreme Court but also by the Allahabad High Court, Chhattisgarh High Court and Uttarakhand High Court in their respective judgments. Further, forced sex, infidelity are grounds of divorce held by the Supreme Court. Specific pleas in regard to the incidents of cruelty have to be given and have to be initiated by the party while alleging divorce on the grounds of cruelty. Adultery, there are judgments that are referred to, a couple of judgments on adultery, wherein both the wife and the husband in each case, one of the first cases of adultery, wherein they were able to prove that either of the spouses was in an adulterous relationship or granted divorce. So these are in a nutshell the judgments or the broad precedents which have been set by the various courts for grant of divorce. But again, one needs to be very particular about the pleadings he makes and the evidence that he leads in support of the pleadings that are made. Now I think I have certain questions which I would start addressing.
Nishant, if you give a minute, I think let Astha take up the questions. Astha, can you take up the question with the speaker?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, the first question has been raised by Meghna, that what's the difference between physical cruelty and assault, sir?
Nice question that comes across. Physical cruelty, assault would, see, first is the legal recourse what we have. So assault is something which would be covered under the Indian Penal Code. So a recourse that either of the spouses has is to file a complaint and subsequently initiation of an FIR under the Indian Penal Code. Whereas physical cruelty also involves the basic ingredient of bodily injury, which has to be subsequently supported or substantiated by a medical document, but is of a lesser grievous nature as compared to assault.
Thank you, sir, for such beautifully explaining the query. Sir, I myself has a question. If you permit me, I can ask you.
Yes, please.
So being an advocate, I just want to know on the part, if I stand on the part of the husband, it's very difficult to prove the cruelty, because I don't think so courts are considering the mental cruelty as a very good ground for divorce. So sometimes I also feel a very lot of challenges being on the side of the husband. So how could we better prove it?
See, this is a question which is, a consideration from many of my clients as well when I appear for the husband. See, the laws are woman centric in India. So for a very fact, this is the hard truth that the laws are somehow or the other favoring the woman. Maybe it be the Domestic Violence Act, maybe it be the 498A. Now, if you come upon proving a particular case, it is difficult. Physical cruelty can be proved easily as compared to the mental cruelty. But how do you prove mental cruelty? Now, suppose I take a small example. Now, in mental cruelty, I suppose write two particular instances in my petition when I file a divorce. Maybe the first round that I take is that I have been forced to humiliation and abusive language in front of my friends over a get together. This is the first specific incident what I allege before the honorable court or take it as a plea for divorce. And the second incident that I allege is that while I am being employed at a particular place, my wife enters my work area or enters the place of employment I am employed with and creates a ruckus for that matter, due to which I have been facing maybe a kind of a show cause notice, or maybe I have been humiliated in front of my colleagues. So let's take these two examples and proceed further. Now, when I try to prove the first incident, so I need to call upon the particular person or my friend who has been named in that particular incident during the stage of evidence. I need to specifically call my friend who will depose that in my favor, that yes, such kind of an incident happened. Yes, the lady had used abusive language in our presence. Obviously, humiliation is something which is very subjective. So obviously, if you ask a friend, he might not be able to comment whether this would amount to a humiliation or not. But saying that yes, in my presence over a gathering at my place, the lady had abused the husband in front of us would be more than sufficient evidence to argue or to obtain divorce on the ground of mental cruelty. And as far the other option is concerned, as far as the second plea that I had taken as far as my workplace is concerned, in order to prove that, maybe if after the ruckus being created by my wife over my workplace, I had been demoted or I had been issued a warning letter. I remember in one of the cases that I did recently, my client was a pilot. While he was flying, he gets a distress call from the traffic control department saying that there is an unknown lady who is not disclosing her name, calling and saying n number of things against my client, that he had taken loans, he had defaulted in making payments of loan. There have been cases which are instituted against him in some foreign country. This caused a lot of distress to me. So the plea that I took in court was a random call by the traffic controller while I am flying and I have the responsibility with me for 140 passengers who are flying with me, amounted to mental cruelty, amounted to humiliation at my workplace, subsequent to which I was given a warning letter for no fault of mine. So by this way, I tried proving the mental cruelty which was inflicted upon my wife, by my wife. So there are various instances which you have to first specifically allege and then collect documents or available evidence in order to prove them. So once you substantiate your plea with the evidence, it is subsequently you make a good case for grant of divorce over an XYZ ground that has been laid down by you.
Okay, sir, thank you so much for the explanation. There is one more question raised by Atishay. The question is, sir, what if the wife is involved in an extramarital affair and has a child with him as well, but the husband, despite knowing it, doesn't want to go for the divorce? On what grounds can the wife file for the divorce in order to spend the rest of her life with her boyfriend and child? I think it's a very practical question because our topic is very much connected with day-to-day affairs. So
Right.
I think the sir question is clear to you, or
The question is quite clear to me.
yeah,
That
okay, sir.
how do we help the lady to enjoy the rest of her life with the boyfriend and the child and to get a divorce from the husband? Now, this particular query has multiple facets to it. Either I am able to establish that I am subjected to cruelty, number one. Either I am able to establish that the husband is impotent, can be another ground of argument. I am able to establish that the husband is not being taking care of me along with the child, can be the third course of argument. The fourth course of argument can be the habitual habits of the husband are not in consonance with how a marital relation proceeds. Maybe he's a drunkard, maybe he uses abusive language, maybe he has a mistress. So these are the grounds by which one can file a ground of divorce. And one has to substantiate it. Again comes out to the question that how do you prove all these things? So you need to have material evidence, because it's a very open-ended question. I can raise all possible grounds which are given to me under the act, but then the question comes is, how do we substantiate that? So anything for which we can slightly collect evidence, because on the contrary, the time I file a divorce, there is going to be a counter that comes into question that I'm into an adulterous relationship. So then the ownership's upon the husband to prove that I'm into an adulterous relationship, or maybe I'm hanging around and I'm having an extramarital affair. But to prove an extramarital affair is very difficult until and unless the spouse who is filing the case on this ground has specific evidence in regard to the same. Maybe an email, maybe a WhatsApp conversation, maybe a love letter, maybe any other documentary evidence which is available. So for a lady who wishes to initiate or wants to get rid of her husband, can use any or every ground available to her, whether it be adultery, whether it be cruelty, whether it be desertion, whether it be non-proper care of the girl and the child, depending upon how well can she substantiate.
Okay, sir, thank you so much again for clearing the doubt. There is one more question raised by Akshay. And the question is, in case of divorce by mutual consent, can the 6 months period waived off, even if the couple has not been living separately for more than one month? And the second question he has raised, that can this mutual separation period be increased to a period of up to 1.5 years by the court?
The answer to the first query is that yes, even if the parties have been living separately for a month, but are able to prove to the court that there is an exceptional or a rare circumstance for initiation of a waiver application or filing of a second motion, then yes, definitely the courts can get into and allow the said application. There have been certain guidelines recently which have been laid down by Justice Anu Malhotra as far as the mutual consent divorce are granted. And how do the family courts deal with the mutual consent divorce? For an example, if the parties have been residing separately for 2 years, file a mutual consent of divorce by the way of first motion. The day it has been granted to them, they can file it in their waiver application and take the plea that the parties have anyhow been living separately for about 2 years. These are the certain circumstances under which it would be a futile exercise for waiting for another 5 months for a mutual consent to be granted. So kindly that period be waived off. As far as the second part is concerned, usually one has to approach the court within 3 to 6 months after 6 months from the date of the first motion. But even if after 1.5 years the second motion is filed, the courts can grant the second motion depending upon the justification that the parties give while filing their second motion as to what were the reason due to which they could not have been filed, due to which the second motion could not have been filed in time. So one of the recent cases, or probably one of the cases that I have encountered during my short tenure of the profession, is that after the first motion, the husband went and relocated himself to Australia. So it was very difficult for me as a lady to call back my husband despite there being a MOU which was executed on a stamp paper. So after a lot of insistence, after a lot of hard work, I was able to convince the parents of the husband, who flew back after 11 months of the first motion, and I had filed an application for the second motion for grant of divorce.
Yes, sir. There is again a question raised by Atishay. He is asking that, can a wife during the period of separation can live with her boyfriend, and the wife is having a child also? So he just want to know what will be the legal consequences.
Definitely after the first motion has been granted, technically speaking and as per the act, she should not indulge into any kind of a relation with an unknown person, or for that matter with a boyfriend, because technically the first granting of the first motion is not a divorce which has been granted. It is only after the first motion, the reason for the 6 months which is given, which is called the cooling off period, is that the parties can think over, decide upon whether they actually want to part ways, and have any kind of a reconciliation which is possible. So as per the act, if the lady after the first motion starts residing with the boyfriend, she would be subjected to not be granted a second motion, number one. And this can be a valid ground of a divorce by the husband if he is able to prove substantiate evidence for the same.
Okay, so there is one more question, and that question was raised by Mayank Mani, and the question is, what recourse can be adopted by a wife wherein her husband has filed for divorce, alleging impotency on her part, but in his evidence by way of affidavit takes a contrary stand by alleging cruelty incidents instead of impotency? Can the pleadings of the husband be struck off?
Definitely yes. When it comes to the evidence by the way of affidavit, where the husband has taken the grounds of cruelty rather than taking recourse to the main ground which he had taken in his petition of impotency, all those paragraphs can be struck off.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. There is one more question, and it is raised by Mrityunjay. And the question is, why abusing husband, father, and mother, and looking them not properly, I think, does it a ground for divorce?
Yes, the same would constitute a ground of divorce. And there have been judgments to that effect by the Supreme Court and the Uttarakhand High Court, if I'm not wrong, that a wife who is not taking proper care of her husband and has an abusive nature against her in-laws, the husband would be entitled to file divorce on the ground of cruelty.
Sir, again a question has been raised, but I think it is apart from the topic, but still I am raising that question. And it is raised by Sahil Sood. He's asking, what is your view on the Uniform Civil Code?
See, definitely the concept, if we talk about Uniform Civil Code, is a very prospective view one could have as far as the laws are concerned, to have a uniformity in all the laws. But how far would it be applicable? How far would it be practicable? And how far could the same be implemented is a question which needs to be tested after a Uniform Civil Code is brought into effect. So this will have its own testings after it has been implemented or is being debated in the houses.
Thank you, Nishan, for giving the answers. One question, rather, it would be an advice and aid to the present topic, which I would be asking you.
Yes, sir.
The things which you have concluded today and in nutshell, what we have gathered from your whole webinar, that the grounds are available for divorce, but yes, for substantiating them by evidence, it is important for the parties to collect the evidence at the first hold and then to go for that particular ground. Don't you think, Nishant, in cases of the mental cruelty, when the cases are filed, there are not much evidences which are available on record. Rather, it is all an allegations which are based on an oath affirmed by an affidavit. Absolutely. So how do you see this as in perspective and a ground of delay in getting the divorce in the ground of mental cruelty?
So definitely, yes, the suggestion that has been put across by you and the thought that has come up to your mind is absolutely very correct. That, you know, from the short tenure of practice I have had in this profession, and through the number of cases, to whatever number of cases that I have dealt on the grounds of divorce, mental cruelty is the most difficult ground which needs to be proved. Now, this can only be substantiated by circumstantial evidence, I would say. Mental cruelty cannot be proved by direct evidence until and unless you have a specific email or a specific document or a specific WhatsApp message now which has been incorporated in the ambit of evidence, wherein there have been specific abuses, there have been specific humiliation, and all the parties these days are quite smart as to not have any kind of a recording or a conversation with this regard. Now, the only way to prove this is the specific instances that you plead while approaching the honorable court for the ground, on the ground of mental cruelty, has to be substantiated in evidence not only by the party himself during his cross, but also by some independent witnesses. So I have taken a small example that if I have been accused, I am alleging humiliation and I am alleging inappropriate statements by my wife before my friends, wherein I felt humiliated and it caused a loss of reputation to me, I will have to cull down and I will have to bring down the people or my friends who were a part of that incident to the court to depose and prove the same. Now, in one of the cases, recently, I had taken a specific allegation that because of such and such conduct by the lady, I was forced to a loss of reputation and humiliation in front of a father or a pope. Herein the parties were Christian. They professed Christianism. My wife had gone to the pope or the father and alleged that I was staying in an adulterous relationship. Subsequently, when my wife was asked to furnish some kind of evidence or a proof to that effect, she was unable to do so. I obviously controverted to all the allegations that were made during my cross-examination. Subsequently, I had to move an application requesting the court to summon that particular father before whom my wife had alleged the wrong allegations of adultery against me. And the court was kind enough to have summoned the witnesses. So now I will just have to cross-examine, or I will just have to ask a simple question. Whether the lady in so and so, whether the first question that I would simply ask is whether the father knows me and the lady. The second thing I'm going to ask is whether in the year so and so, had the particular lady come up to you and alleged adultery against me? The third question that I need to ask him, whether was she able to produce or give any kind of evidence to that effect? And that is it. I do not have to cross-examine further. So if the father says yes, if the father says the charges were not proved, this would become a ground for cruelty. So it has to be through independent witnesses that the mental cruelty needs to be proved. Or another example that can be used, or another way how mental cruelty is to be proved, can be that subject to the acts of the lady. I have gone into depression, but this can be used the other way around as well. So my wife can also take it against me, since he is suffering from depression, I do not want to stay with him. So this is a kind of a ground which is not usually used.
Right. I think we have got it. And, giving the law with the adjoining practical examples have a much inference to be drawn in the litigation. So that's what is most important and we require in the same. So with this, I require Astha, or Astha, are you there? I request
Yes,
Astha to, kindly officially give the thanking note to our today's speaker, Mr. Nishant Anand, for this wonderful lecture.
it's my immense pleasure to thank Nishant sir for being here with us today. It was an informative session, sir, and was a topic of common knowledge and most appealing nowadays. As we all know, it is important for lawyers to not only know the law, but also judicial developments in the law. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us by throwing the judicial pronouncement of law. It was an honor to have you on this platform. Lastly, I would like to thank our viewer who took out time to stay with us till end. Thank you, Nitesh sir, for giving me this opportunity to moderate this webinar. Thanks to all the members, thanks to our speaker, thanks to Nitesh sir for present over here. Now, over to you, sir. Thank you.
A small note of thanks for Nitesh Mehra and Associates to have wonderfully organized a webinar and giving me the opportunity to come and address my fellow colleagues. Apart from me being a participant to the webinar, I have been off lately following the webinar series which Mr. Nitesh Mehra along with his beautiful team, hardworking team, has been organizing post this lockdown. Beautiful topics have come up, beautiful speakers have come up, which have not only enlightened me, but also my fellow colleagues and many members of the bar. It's a beautiful effort that he has made. And I hope he continues with this effort even post lockdown and once the court resumes. Thank you, Astha, for beautifully moderating the session. And a wonderful kudos effort, I would rather say, to Nitesh Mehra and his associates to have kept the lawyers a little occupied and busy during this lockdown. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nishant, for the wonderful and I will say the kind words which I have received from you. But being my junior, you are now our associate and colleague whom we look forward, and many are being following you on the topics which you are giving and the formation of our opinion to the series of the lectures which you have given over the time. You have not only thrown the light, but you have also thrown the practicalities of the subject from the sessions which you have taken. So thank you so much, Nishan, for being with us today on the board. And one request has come to me, Nishan, the citations which you have cited The viewers are requesting for the list of the same. So I would be requesting you to provide us so that we can float it on the broadcast list which we have. Thank you, Nishant.
Right. So I will compile the judicial pronouncements in a 2-pager or a 3-pager, which is convenient for everyone. And I'll be sharing that with you. You can further share it on your portal.
Thank you, Nishant, with this.
Thank
And
you
with
so
this,
much.
we end today's webinar.
Wish all the best to everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shobhit.
Thank you for the informative.
Thank you, Shobhit. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.